Welcome to Nova Scotia, a place where the heart of the Atlantic meets the spirit of Canada. This isn't your typical travel countdown. This is a deep dive into the soul of Canada's East Coast, where every stop has a story and every view feels like a secret revealed. We're counting down the top 7 places you have to visit in Nova Scotia. And number 1, it's the kind of place that stays with you long after the tide rolls out. Number 7, Annapolis Royal, Canada's oldest story still being told. Long before Canada had a name, Annapolis Royal was already shaping its future. Once a thriving Micmac site, then claimed by the French as Port Royal in 1605, this was one of the first European settlements in North America. Over the next 2 centuries, it changed hands between the French and British more than a dozen times. Each battle, treaty, and takeover leaving scars still felt today. At Fort Anne, Canada's oldest national historic site, the star-shaped walls still stand guard. Wander past cannons and grassy embankments, and you're walking through the front lines of colonial power struggles. But this town doesn't just preserve history, it lives it. Heritage homes lean into the sea breeze, ghost tours wind through candlelit graveyards, and locals share stories that feel as old as the soil itself. In Annapolis Royal, the past isn't past, it's part of the present, whispering through every stone, every shadow, every step. Number 6, Louisbourg, the fortress that refused to be forgotten. On the windswept coast of Cape Breton, surrounded by sea spray and salt air, stands a fortress that once held the fate of an empire. In the 18th century, Fortress Louisbourg was the linchpin of France's colonial ambitions in North America. Guarding the entrance to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, it protected vital trade routes and the cod-rich waters that fed New France's economy. Behind its towering stone walls lived over 4,000 soldiers, merchants, fishermen, and families, a bustling city in the wilderness. But Louisbourg was a priority target for France's enemies. In 1745, British forces stormed the fortress. The French took it back. Then in 1758, the British returned with overwhelming force and captured it once again, this time for good. What followed was complete destruction. The mighty fortress was torn down, its stones scattered to the wind. For nearly 2 centuries, Louisbourg lay in ruins, a ghost of its former power. But in the 1960s, Canada did something extraordinary. It brought Louisbourg back to life. Using original plans, diaries, and archaeological evidence, workers rebuilt large portions of the fortress in painstaking detail. Today, it stands as the largest historical reconstruction project in North America. And it's not just a monument, it's a living look at history. Step inside and you're transported to 1744. Soldiers patrol the ramparts, cannons boom across the harbor, blacksmiths shape iron in open forges, bakers pull loaves from wood-fired ovens. Every sound, smell, and detail pulls you deeper into another time. This isn't just a place you visit, it's a place you inhabit. Because Louisbourg isn't history on display, it's history that draws you in, dares you to listen, and refuses to be forgotten. Number 5, Bay of Fundy, where the ocean breathes life to the shore. On the western edge of Nova Scotia lies a coastline unlike any other on Earth, the Bay of Fundy, home to the highest tides in the world. Here, the ocean doesn't just rise and fall, it transforms the land. Every 6 hours, the tide rolls in with such force and volume, it moves 160 billion tons of seawater in and out of the bay. Nowhere is that drama more staggering than along Nova Scotia's side of the Fundy coast. At Burnt Coat Head, the tides reach their peak, surging up to 16 meters, taller than a 5-story building. One moment, you're standing on the ocean floor, surrounded by towering red cliffs and sea-carved rock spires. But when the tide comes in, that same ground has vanished under a sea that seems to arrive from nowhere. In places like Five Islands Provincial Park, the landscape is wild and raw. Walk out across rippled mudflats, search for ancient fossils embedded in the cliffs, or spot bald eagles soaring overhead. And when the tide returns, it comes fast. So fast, in fact, that it can outpace a running horse. This isn't a quiet seaside. It's a coast that moves, that breathes, that speaks with the voice of the Atlantic. Number 4, Halifax, the heartbeat of Eastern Canada. Halifax is no quiet coastal outpost. It's a city built on cannon smoke, salt air, and second chances. The East Coast's beating heart, pulsing with history, resilience, and soul. Climb the slopes to Citadel Hill, where the iconic star-shaped fortress still watches over the harbor, just as it has since the 1700s. British redcoats once marched these ramparts. Today, it's bagpipes, cannon blasts, and living history that bring it all roaring back to life. Below, the harborfront buzzes, where ships unload cargo by day and street musicians play under the glow of pub lights by night. You can stroll along the boardwalk, catch the salty breeze, and feel the Atlantic lapping at your feet. The same waters that carried convoys into war, immigrants into hope, and tragedy into history. When night falls, Halifax comes alive. Celtic tunes spill from stone-walled pubs. Students, sailors, and storytellers share tables and tall tales. Ghost tours wind through old graveyards where soldiers, smugglers, and scandals still linger in the shadows. In Halifax, history isn't a museum exhibit. It's part of the air. You breathe it in with every pint, every cannon salute, every footstep on cobblestone. Here, in this charming city, you can't help but feel the pulse of Eastern Canada. Number 3. Lunenburg. Lunenburg isn't just a town, it's a maritime masterpiece. Founded in 1753, laid out in a perfect British grid, and brought to life by German settlers, this UNESCO World Heritage Site blends old-world precision with East Coast soul. But what makes it unforgettable is the color. Homes painted in bold reds, yellows, blues, and greens, a sailor's signal to the sea, and a celebration of coastal life. Each one tells a story, handed down with every coat of paint and clapboard repair. The waterfront hums with the legacy of shipbuilding, and at its heart, the Bluenose. Born in these shipyards in 1921, the schooner became a symbol of speed, pride, and grit. Today, her spirit lives on in the Bluenose too, still moored in the same harbor, sails snapping in the Atlantic breeze. Wander the docks, feel the salt in the air. Talk to locals who've known the sea for generations. Lunenburg isn't just preserved, it's alive, a town painted by the sea and held together by hand. Number 2. Peggy's Cove, the lighthouse on the edge of forever. Peggy's Cove isn't just a place, it's a mood. Windswept, salt-stung, and carved into the bones of Nova Scotia. The village itself is a scattering of weathered fishing shacks, quiet boats, and granite boulders polished smooth by centuries of wind and sea. It clings to the edge of the continent like it was always meant to be there, simple, stubborn, and unshaken. And at its heart stands the Peggy's Cove Lighthouse, whitewashed and weather-beaten, rising from the rock like a sentinel. Built in 1915 to replace an earlier wooden structure from 1868, it was one of the first Canadian lighthouses made of reinforced concrete, a bold design for a brutal coastline. More than a postcard, it's a monument to every mariner who never made it home, to every storm weathered, to the quiet dignity of endurance. Peggy's Cove doesn't sell you a story. It just stands there, stark, eternal, and waiting. And somehow, that silence says everything. Number 1. Cape Breton, where the road meets the sky. Cape Breton isn't just a destination, it's a journey. This island, perched at the northeastern tip of Nova Scotia, is where mountains meet the sea, where fog rolls in like myth, and where every bend in the road feels like a page turning in an epic you didn't know you were part of, until now. The crown jewel is the Cabot Trail, 300 kilometers of winding highway that clings to cliffs, dives into valleys, and opens up to views so vast they make your chest ache. One moment you're in the highlands, where bald eagles soar above rust-red bluffs. The next, you're tracing the coastline past windswept fishing villages, moose crossing the road like they own it. But Cape Breton is more than scenery. It's story. It's the Gaelic rhythms still spoken in Mabou and Judique. It's the Mi'kmaq heartbeat that echoes through centuries of survival. It's the legacy of French Acadians, the Scottish settlers, the coal miners, the fiddlers, the poets. It's sealids in church halls, lobster boiled beside lighthouses, bagpipes on the breeze. Cape Breton doesn't feel like Canada. It feels like another world, one wilder, older, and deeply alive. And once you arrive, part of you never leaves. We hope you find all the treasure Nova Scotia has to offer. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.